All right, y'all, a little air guitar for you. It is tipping points and puzzle pieces. It is the best hour of your week. You know how we do. It is Mark Boatwright-Frost and Marwan Cameron. We're going to have a riveting conversation for you today. Let me go ahead and bring Mark on up. Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
You already know. You already know.
I
Uh,
do.
before we before we get started, I gotta just take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Today is Mark Boatwright-Frost's birthday.
Uh,
So if you
I thought
haven't,
that was a really well kept secret.
it's it, it's not. We got to get it out there. We got to broadcast it. All right, y'all. You know how we do.
Yep.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mark. Happy birthday to you. Uh-oh, it's the remix. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Mark.
Thank you. And don't I wish I was 25? If I were 25 and knew what I know now, it would be rocking good time.
Well, I won't put your age out there, but it is on Facebook. So if you guys want to know how old Mark is, he put it all out there. So happy birthday.
Yeah.
Another
Thank you.
rotation around the sun there. So yeah,
Yep.
appreciate you. So how you feeling on your
Thank
birthday?
you. It's been a day. It's actually been a pretty good day. Like most days, you start off thinking it's going to be one way, and it goes another way, and it's okay because it all gets you where you're going,
All right.
even
Well,
if you didn't expect it.
you got a bunch of birthday wishes coming in from Michael
Yep.
and Terry and Rob and Shaylin. Thank you all for the birthday wishes for Mr. Boat Right Frost. You
Thank
know, we gotta
y'all.
we gotta get into the meaning of your names there because those are interesting.
Okay, that's going to be a really simple and very fast discussion.
Okay.
When I got married in 1992, my wife had been married once before, and she said that she would give up her name if I would give up my name, and we would join the name. So her name is Boatwright. My name is Frost. And apparently, the name outlasted the marriage by a couple of years. And I'm so used to it now that I just keep it.
Wow. Well, that's very progressive of you there, Mr. Boatwright Frost. Pretty
You know,
cool.
she's right that and we're talking about freedom. So let's talk about that in context of freedom. She was saying that in our traditional marriage sense, giving up a woman giving up her name is giving up her ownership to the man. And if you read about marriage and the way that it is meant, frequently, in most of the marriage vows, it's denoting ownership of the woman to the man. And so that's kind of giving up your freedom. And Diane asked me to please share freedom with her and partner with her. And I said, that sounds like a better way to go to me.
Well, I got a lot of thoughts on that. I think marriage is a bad deal for men. So don't advocate for marriage.
Well,
but
that's a much longer conversation, and we might just do an episode on marriage and
that would be
or social contracts,
yeah,
which marriage
absolutely.
is.
We should do that. Yes, absolutely.
Actually, I think episode 35 would be a really good thing to talk about. I'm
Wait,
trying to
how
do this
far in the
every
future
five.
is
We have
that?
6 months or
6
6 weeks.
months?
6 weeks.
Oh
6 weeks.
my god. Talk about
6
kicking the
weeks.
can down the road, like 6 months.
No, but at 30, at episode 30, which is 2 episodes away, I have the big picture.
Okay.
And and going out, if you guys have never seen the movie Creator with Peter O'Toole, it's worth finding it and watching it. It's hysterical. It's a wonderful movie, and his vision of the big picture is something I've held with me forever. So we'll talk about the big picture at 30. But 35 sounds like a great time to do social contracts because
All
it's a
right.
big subject and we can have a lot of fun with it. And I like to, every fifth anniversary of our episodes, I like to do something bigger than the regular episodes, something to bring it all together.
All right, I love it.
So this one is about freedom. And for those of you who remember last week, if you'd watched it, and I put the link in the description of the video, Bo of the Fifth Column had a recent 6-minute video on the wages of freedom, where he talks about what freedom is. And I love the way it starts. And I don't think we're going to get a copyright strike on this one because I'm giving him complete credit for it. The way he starts it is he talks about, people talk a lot about freedom in this country because we're Americans and we're patriotic and we have freedom. Well, so do a lot of other countries. But ask somebody what freedom is, and you get the mom and apple pie discussion. And freedom is really, and I can give you for the Oxford Dictionary's definition of it. Freedom is essentially, I will do that in just a moment, Marwan. Freedom is the lack of being able to act without coercion.
Mm.
So if you just take that very simple definition of freedom, in our society today, how free are we? I'm going to break this down and dive deeper into it. But just in the very start, I'm going to throw that question out to you. How free are we? How much freedom do we have from coercion in our society?
Ooh. Well, we have to be intellectually honest here. So what I will state off the bat is that I recognize that we have many more freedoms than several other countries on the planet. But that said, whew, man, when you really think about it, how free do I feel that I am? Man, that's a pretty deep question. On the one hand, I feel very liberated, um, just because of my own maturity and where I am today. It's not that I can do anything or go anywhere uh, and make every decision that I want, that no matter how it impacts someone else. However, um, I am able to pursue things like running this nonprofit and reaching out to folks, and so I have the power to choose to spend my time in this way. So in that regard, I feel quite free, right? On the other hand, there are a lot of oppressive systems that are in place, and a lot is centered around capitalism, and some other things that I think have gone off the rails, where I don't feel free at all, right?
Right.
I
And
still
and
have
Bo
to
and
go
Bo
ahead.
very clearly stated that freedom has a great deal to be based on your power chits, and your power chits tend to be green and have numbers on them. If you have more power chits, you have more freedom than other people. But there's other things too. So let's dive deep. There many people have said to me, talked about my white privilege, and again, I will say that that's more about other people's view of me than it is about me. Unless I am entitled, unless I'm acting entitled, then it's about me. But I would say
Well,
that
and
that
you
gives me more.
hold on, because I'm not
Yeah.
going to let you state that without you
Okay. Well, then,
understanding, the
well,
audience understanding that I vehemently disagree with that statement. But continue.
okay. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later in more as well.
Mhm.
But in this case, because I think you'll agree with me if you understand how I mean it, and what my intent about that is, which we've talked about lots in this program. But I would
I know,
say
but I don't think so.
in our society, I have a lot of inherent freedom because of the color of my skin that you don't share.
Well, then wouldn't that be the antithesis of white privilege?
Well, yeah, I'm not saying I don't have white privilege. I'm saying I do, but but what I'm actually saying about the entitlement versus privilege is put upon me because I was born white. I don't have any choice in that matter. Entitlement is how I act. Yes, I have privilege, and that gives me more freedom. And if I was white and had this privilege and a lot of money, I'd have a whole lot more freedom. That's just the way our society works. But what I do with that privilege is entitlement. Either I act entitled to have privilege and own that over other people, or I'm just a human being doing human things, and my skin color doesn't really matter to me at all, but it does
That's,
matter to
that's
society, which does matter to society, which is why it's put on me, as opposed. I mean, my privilege is not because I was born special.
oh my God,
It's
sounds
about
like you're
society.
oppressed. You're oppressed because you have privilege.
No,
Because
I'm not
the way you're
oppressed.
stating it is like it's
I'm
being
not
put
oppressed. I
on
just
me.
well, it is put on people because society anoints us with this. It's not anything we have earned. Have I earned any special treatment just because my skin color is a different color than yours?
No,
No, that's put on me by society. What I do with it is on me, and that's why I say either I act entitled by it or I act like a human being and just do the best I can. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're trying to get to, but I still disagree with that. I mean, if you
Help me,
look
then
at,
help me then help me get there. Help me get there. You
let,
know where I'm trying to go. Then help me get there because I'm obviously not communicating it well enough.
yeah, so you've got this privilege, right? And I have privilege as an able-bodied individual, right? As
Right.
someone who is we're in a caste society here, right? So
Right.
I have privileges based on my income in comparison to others. In
Right.
regards to you, a quick example off the top of my head, right? They've done studies on when people do job applications, white sounding names versus black sounding names, right? You're
Right.
you're not using your privilege in that way, as you're saying that privilege is put upon you, but that is still a benefit that you gain, whether or not
No
you're
argument.
trying to activate it or not. You know what I'm saying?
No argument. No argument at all. But I'm saying I did nothing to earn it.
I
I
agree
was
with
born
that.
this way. Yeah, I have done nothing to earn the privilege that is thrust upon me. That's all I'm saying. I have no control over it. And except if I act like an asshole, or what I tend to call entitlement when I'm trying to be less emphatic about it.
I still have to disagree with that because at the end of the day, what happens is it's like benign neglect, right? So it's like, look, I'm not actively going out and seeking to take advantage of my privilege. However, because I'm in this system,
Mm-hmm.
right, that it exists, things are going to come to me. Opportunities are going to be easier. I'm going to be able to go
Exactly.
into spaces that other people can't go into. And as
We are
if
not
everyone,
disagreeing.
but if everyone has that attitude, right, then we're still in the situation that we're in
Mm-hmm.
because the unintentional use of that privilege, still the result is still the same, right?
True, but I have no control over it. That's what I'm saying. It's like the wind and the thunder and lightning today. I don't control how other people see me or approve. That's a society based thing, not a mark based thing. I can't go
But
out
we the
and
people, we form society, right?
then we have
We
to
shape
change it.
culture. So then
Yeah,
I'm saying,
and
so
that's
then
what
you
we've been.
are
And
in power.
that's what we're talking about all these 27 8 episodes up to this point is we're talking about there's some things that need to be changed. I think that needs to be changed. I think we need to level the playing field, and that is something we have to do together.
Ooh, that's a hard one. I agree with you. So where are we having a disagreement at?
We aren't. I said we're not disagreeing about anything. We're just saying it
Sounds
differently.
good to me.
But for much like last week, for people who hear me one way and don't understand what I'm trying to get to, we've now clarified it for them.
Yeah, and I think, again, we're all always modeling this, which is
Mhm.
great, right? And it takes something where a lot of folks would feel very emotional by just the conversation, right? And they may not be able to have that conversation. It's like, no, we're gonna talk through it. It's all good. Um, yeah, that I think there are a lot of white people or white passing people that are working on that, right? I mean, there's colorism also that
Mhm.
exists, and so obviously a lot more needs to be done. And I believe like this show, our relationship, those are ways in which we're working through those things. That's why those things are important to me. I was just sharing that about
Right.
us to someone else last week.
So I think we can take from this conversation and where we've gone with this, and I'm urging everybody to go watch Bo because He's got some really great. The guy does some amazing analysis. He just does. Um, but how free are we in this country, really? I mean, we have some choices, but are we? Aren't we coerced on many levels by many things?
Yeah, I think we get more stick than carrot.
Yeah. So right now we're watching an authoritarian movement in this country that will be taking more and more of our freedoms away. And we can talk about the Supreme Court having taken a major freedom away from one gender, one complete gender in this country. No, women no longer have a right to choose their own health care and their own choice, make their own choices.
Well, there again, that's a point of contention for me.
You don't think that women should have a right to choose?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that women should have a right to choose, but I think men should have a right to choose also. So, what you're talking about is the conversation with Roe versus Wade, right?
Right.
And so, while I can subscribe to, all right, it's a woman's body, uh, her body, her right, then I think men should also have that option also. So, if abortion is going to be legal, then financial abortion should also be legal for the man, right?
And
So,
that's a conversation. That's a wider conversation we can have. But let's circle
oh,
back to the
well,
actual
hold on,
subject.
hold on,
No, no,
hold
I
on. Well, I just want to make this statement, right? Because this is what happens every time this is
okay.
brought up. So
Go
someone
ahead.
will advocate for one person's side, right? And right now, Roe versus Wade is a big deal. But when there's an advocation for men on the other side of that, it's like, oh, that's a larger conversation. Let's circle back. And I'm not saying that it's you. It's every time this conversation is brought up, right? So it's like, okay, if a woman has a right to decide whether or not she's going to abort the child, carry it to term, give the child away for adoption, those are all of her choices. I'm merely stating that a man should also have those choices, right? He can't dictate what a woman should do, whether or not to carry the child to term, give it up for adoption, or abort the child. However, he should have the ability to say, I don't want to be a father. I don't want to have anything to do with this child, just as she does, right? And at the same respect, I don't think taxpayers should also be on the hook for taking care of a child that a person or a couple decide to bring into the world. We can digress from that, but I think that needs to be stated because the other part of it is never talked about.
It's actually a conversation worth having. I'm just being aware that it's now 20 after, and we have a topic here that will derail us completely from.
No, no,
So I
no.
will tell
I
you
just
what.
wanted to make that statement. That's
No,
it.
no,
That's all I
that's okay.
that's all I wanted to do
So
there.
so and I'm not ignoring that statement, and I would like to actually talk about that on a larger scale because there's a lot of things I have questions I have about that because it's actually not something I've thought much about. And I'd like to ask questions. So we may set a program up for just that subject.
Well, we probably just
But
lost
going
10
back to Roe
subscribers.
versus Wade, we had the women had the legal right to have an abortion, and now they don't. So I think in just that very clear cut term, they lost a freedom they had a month and a half ago.
I don't know how accurate that statement is. I think isn't it
Okay,
only
talk
one
about that.
state right now that is where abortion is illegal? I mean, what they've
And
done is they pushed it back to states, right? And most states are still it's still legal, correct?
at this moment, but there are movements in most of those states in several states to take it away. And at the very least, people who are impoverished are facing a situation of having a baby they didn't want or going to another state that they can't afford to do. And those are just some of the questions, and I don't want to derail this on the Roe
Okay.
versus Wade.
All right. All right.
So and again, it's a larger discussion on a very simple statement though. Women had an apparent right to have an abortion that has now been overturned, and the states are allowed to take it away, and predominantly on policy, on rhetoric, political rhetoric, as opposed to any real hard. Let's see, federal 13 states. Okay, I was thinking 9, but there are 13 states in the process of doing that. and our Congress is not moving to ratify it and bring it back because it's political. It's not ethical. It's not physical. It's not healthcare issue. It is a political issue. It's to basically to create a base, and that's part of the authoritarian move to show control over the people. One of the ways that this country has been doing that in stealth mode is our prison system. I came to an awareness when a friend of mine went to prison about 15, 16 years ago. And I started learning that he is working at a facility here in Washington State that manufactures high-end furniture. And he makes something like $1.10 an hour that goes into the against his costs of being incarcerated. While the furniture being sold to high-end corporations goes for a lot of money, and there's an enormous amount of profit, more profit because it's slave labor.
Facts.
And we incarcerate more people per capita than any other country in the world by rather a large percentage point. So how free are we when money or lack of money puts you in a situation where you're making more money for somebody else while you've completely lost your freedom and then living in a heinous situation?
No argument from me. Keep preaching.
So how free are we in this country? We have more prisoners per capita than any other country in the world. We talk about how free we are in this country, and yet out of the 126 countries signed up to the UN charters, most of them have some form of democracy and freedom. Japan, Canada, France, Germany, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. I mean, we can go on and on and on. A lot of countries have freedom. Many of them more freedom for their citizens than we have here.
Let me ask you a question.
So
Mark.
what is freedom?
Let me ask you a question. Like, how do we unravel that, right? Because they're decriminalizing, drugs in some cases, and minor offenses that are related to drug use. But we're also seeing, on the news everywhere, folks are running in and, I mean, stealing. It was like 3 girls. I was just watching the video. They were running in and stealing men's boxer shorts that sell for like $40 a pack, and they're stealing them by the thousands. And they're just kind of running in the stores and running out. And so what's that doesn't seem to be the answer. How do we move? How do we right that ship?
Okay, so let's go back to the power chits. You know, the green ones with the president's faces on them and the numbers in the corners. The more of those you have, the more power you have, the more freedom you have. People without power are seeking to survive, and we've talked about this in numerous episodes. Where when you're talking about, let me just say this number one more time, and this is the last number I can quote. I'm sure it's higher. 46%, 150 million people in this country are one paycheck away from homeless. SNAP benefits do not cover enough money for food. Not really. So how is it that people can survive in this environment? Yet corporations, and I'm not creating this good versus evil thing, but corporations are providing record profits, and we are taking record losses. Now, I want to draw a little line from history here. Oh, hi, Sean. Good to see you. Back in Nixon's day, we took the government took the U.S. dollar off of the gold standard. At that point, we had gold bars in Fort Knox that was guarded by the U.S. military that backed our dollars, and every dollar was worth X amount of a bar of gold. And so our dollar was backed by hard gold currency. But that was too restrictive, so we went off the gold standard. And at that point, they said that our dollar is backed by our manufacturing capability. Now, let's talk about what happened in Reagan's years, where suddenly all of this manufacturing capability offshored. So now what is our dollar backed by? Our ability to do service was what was said then. When was the last time you called customer service and talked to somebody in our country? Or were they talking about mechanics and waitresses and bartenders? Is that the service they were talking about? Because that seems to be the only jobs left in this country that aren't corporate.
It seems like
And
our
they pay
money is
15
backed
bucks
by
an
the
hour.
military.
That's a good point. And so our money is backed by our ability to believe and the world's ability to believe that our money is solid. Now we're looking at the economy, and they're not talking about GDP anymore. They're not talking about what we produce. They're not talking about any real economic engine. They're talking about the stock market. And what percentage of the people do you think the stock market actually represents? 10%, 20, 25? Certainly doesn't represent the 46% of the country who's one paycheck away from homelessness. So what is our money backed by? Belief. So our government might as well just be a religion because their belief is what we do it. Absolutely. So Michael said it went from the gold standard to the Amazon standard. Amen. That's absolutely true. So when we have this, I mean, and people talk about pulling you up by bootstraps, when the majority of jobs in this country are now $15 an hour jobs, which we have shown mathematically does not pencil out to being able to live.
Right.
So when we look at all of this, and we're looking at freedom, how many people in this country actually are free if we're talking about the dollar as the standard of freedom?
Well, I mean, you've been making the point this whole time. Again, how do you write that ship? Is the question. I mean, because there's this illusion that, you know, I think there are several people that don't dismantle what exists because the hope, what we're being sold on, is if you keep striving, you can get to the point where you have more dollars and you'll be just like us up here and you'll be secure, right? So we just we're on this hamster wheel trying to chase something that many of us will never get or achieve.
90% or better will never achieve it because it's not stacked in our favor. It's stacked against us. And that's on purpose. That's the way that the system was designed. So how do we write this? Let's go back to the puzzle. Okay. So we have a framework that's a human-based framework. I think a human-based framework, and argue with me if you like, but a human-based framework is a place to start because as human beings, there are certain things that are common to us all. And if we start there and look at our human needs, food, water, shelter, education, healthcare, if those are the basic things we look at, that's the framework. So if people bring their pieces to the puzzle, we can start talking about men's freedom of choice as part of the discussion. We can start talking about other things and come to a place where we see things together. If we come with intellectual honesty and an open heart, we can come to a place where we have agreements and find common ground. And we can all agree that many, many, many things are broken. And there are fewer and fewer people that believe that hamster wheel is the way to go. So we can come to an agreement and then we can start working at changing things. But it can't be done in a big way at first. It has to be built slowly, one block at a time. And by one block at a time, I mean your neighborhood, one neighborhood at a time, is getting people together and building grassroots networks from there because that's copable, that's buildable, that lays a foundation of change. If anybody still thinks that you can go to your congressman and have them help you out with this, it's not in their best interest. It's not going to happen. Doesn't matter who you voted for. So how do we do it? Together. How do we do it? Do you want a practical thing? email Marwan or me, and we'll put our emails in the piece here, and tell us you want to be a community ambassador, and we will get together with you and see if we can work out a time for us to help you connect with your neighborhood. Um, Resilient Ecosystems, the organization I run, basically, our job is to be a toolbox for you to help you successfully connect with your neighbors and help you develop the tools you need to become resilient within your community. But our job is also to take you and take that representative voice of your community and bring it into a multiple community voice that builds a grassroots network for change. How do you change things? By coming together. Because coming together, you can make change, but it's not fast. It's not running out and protesting, and it's not screaming at the top of your lungs that this is wrong. It's building a solution that will work. Because you can't just tell people it's wrong. You have to have a solution. You have to work for a solution, and that can only come if we hear each other's voices.
Now, let me ask you this, and trying to be solution oriented, right? Because I think ultimately, and to kind of go back to Roe versus Wade, one of the reasons why I think that exists is, again, one thing that needs to be done away with is lifetime appointments, right? There should be term limits so that we can continue to progress as a country. So these folks have been, in their spaces for decades, and they have antiquated ideas that are not, contemporary with how Americans feel today, which I think is one of the biggest issues that we have going on. But if we look at analytically, like MAGA, right, and how they were able to catch steam, and even where Trump is now, you still have a lot of ideology that exists throughout the country, and folks are still running on that platform. So, you know, I think two things. One, that it's not as hard as it sounds because there's a success story in that, right? This thing
Mm-hmm.
caught wave and it's still going. And even with everything that's going on with him now, you still have all of this power and momentum. So how do we
He still has a
capture
base.
that? Yeah, how do we capture
By
that and
Okay, so a
maximize it?
percentage of the so a percentage of the people are going to go for a idea like MAGA with
Mhm.
no substance underneath it because we've been trained, taught, indoctrinated not to go beyond the substance. Somebody else has it, and actually, this was a conversation I had this morning. We are taught from early on that the answers are outside of ourselves, not to look to each other, not to look inside of ourselves to find the answers. But the answers aren't outside of us, and we take things like MAGA and run with it. So here's one I got for you that is our MAGA coming back from Resilient Ecosystems. We got your back and your future too. Work with us.
Hmm.
We're bringing our toolbox to the table. We got your back, and so do your neighbors. But you have to build it. MAGA is somebody else is going to do it for me, and they're going to take care of me. And people are looking for that because they're failing. And they're doing it, and they're failing because it's out of their control. We need to help them come together to succeed. And there's no easy forward answer to do that. All I can say is we got your back. You work with us, we will do everything we can do to work with you.
I'm thinking
And
about what you're saying there.
it doesn't make a good anagram or doesn't make a
Bumper
we
sticker.
got your back WGYB. Now sounds like BYOB. I'll have to work on that.
I think a lot of people be on board for that one. So my thought is you have folks on the MAGA side, you have far left folks, right? And that base,
And then
those
there's
bases.
most of us in the middle.
But how do you? But the ones in the middle feel the most disenfranchised, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you activate those folks? Where do we get the synergies from the both sides there and pull it to the middle?
You ignore them. You ignore the outside. Both sides are screaming whatever they scream. So people in the middle, you got to build
No,
a relationship with.
I'm saying something different. What I'm saying is
Okay,
they have successes. They have built a base, right? They've activated
right.
their folks. They come out, they buy the hats, they hold the signs, they come to the polls. How do we reactivate, the middle? Or activate the middle? Because so many have felt
One neighborhood,
disenfranchised for
one
years.
neighborhood at a time. One neighborhood at a time. You connect the neighbors, you educate them, you bring them together, you show them that there's power to do different things differently. But we do it with starting with community gardens. We start talking about very simple things and building on it as you build a team. That's how you ignite the middle. And by the way, in our election, our recent election, I went and took a look at the actual people who voted in our election.
Hmm.
24 point some percent, less than a quarter of the people who are eligible to vote voted in the election a couple weeks ago. 24%. Last presidential election was 35%.
Now, was that 24% of those who were eligible to vote?
Yep,
Is
of
that how
those
they're
who were
looking at that?
eligible to vote. Yeah. Yeah, I go to the Secretary of State or the Kitsap County Auditor's page to find out what the percentages were after every election because I'm always curious to see how many voted. So out of those 24 some percent, let's call it 24.5%, just gratuitously. Out of those, people who are MAGA or far left are probably represent 20% of that 24%.
Hmm.
So motivating people to even do the things that would help them immensely is hard. Now, why are people disincentivized to vote? I mean, it's our right. It shows our freedom. But how much freedom is it when we're handed people that are so not representing us that it is ridiculous? I mean, you look at any list of people and you go through the pamphlet and you start reading about them, and you're going, oh my God, no. And even the people who are like long-term senators and Congress people, you look at this, they don't represent me. They have no experience about what my life is like. So how do I feel enfranchised to go vote for these people when they don't represent me? And if they don't represent me, they don't represent 40% of us, 50% of us. Who do they represent? They represent politicians and corporations. Because they sure as hell don't represent you, and they sure as hell don't represent me, and they don't represent anybody I know, and they're not doing anything that's helping us in a long way. Or if it is, it's basically kind of a miracle, meaning something that doesn't happen very often. So how do you re-enfranchise people? By stopping paying attention to the political side of things and build relationships with people and get to the political when you have agreement about what needs to change. And you can actually do something about it. Because our Constitution's first three words are
"We the people." Sean says in the chat, through quantitative easing, the U.S. government has purchased $9 trillion in bad debt from U.S. Corporations. So it is a myth that capitalists pull themselves up.
Well, yes and no. The corporations and capitalists are two different things. Capitalists are the boards of directors of those corporations, not the workers or the corporations themselves. Corporation, if you think about the corporation as a mechanism to funnel cash up, and that's pretty much what they do. And I'll make an argument for that. When a CEO, and most of them are bonused much greater than their salary, exponentially greater than their salary on stock performance, what is the product of the company? Stock performance. When I was working in Silicon Valley, I noticed that. I was going, but the product and the support system and all of these things need to be done. Well, it doesn't matter. We're making tons and tons of money on stock. And all of the people that are working in the company have stock options and are looking at making their millions of dollars on stock, which in turn turned out to be a shell game because the dot-com bust happened.
Did you want me to play the video from Bo?
No, because you'll get a copyright strike, won't you?
No, we'll just pause every little bit. We should be okay. And I put it in the chat there.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and let him do the talking for us.
All right. All right. So, put up my copyright disclaimer. Fair use.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we're going to talk about the wages of freedom, what freedom really is. Because that's a term that in the United States, that gets thrown around a lot. But when you ask people, what does freedom mean to you? Most times they really can't answer. I mean, you get standard, canned, patriotic answers, mom and apple pie and all of that stuff. So take a moment and try to come up with an encompassing definition for freedom. Odds are you're probably going to come up with something along the lines of the ability to do what you want. That's freedom, right? And that may sound silly, but that's not actually too far from the standard definitions. Like the quality or state of being free, such as the absence of necessity, coercion, or constraint in choice or action. So if you need to do something, if you have to do it, if you're coerced into doing it, if you don't have a lot of options, you're not free, right?
So that was the part where you were talking about are you coerced? And if you
Yep.
are being coerced, then how can you be free? Okay, let's continue.
What does it take to be free in the land of the free, the home of the brave, and all that stuff? What does it actually take to be in a situation similar to that, where you don't need to do whatever it is you're about to do? You don't have outside forces pushing on your decision to an extreme level, right? What's it take? Money, power coupons, cash, currency. In the United States, freedom is money, because that's the system that we have built. That's the system that we have let get way out of hand. If you don't have money, you're being coerced. If you don't have cash, you don't have those power coupons, you have to get up and go to work even if you're sick. Because if you don't, you're going to be out in the street. What does that say?
No, I'd even say folks that have money have an illusion of freedom.
I would agree.
I'll continue.
And also he said it's necessity. I always
Mhm.
remember the statement of necessity is a mother.
About politicians who push back against the minimum wage, against a living wage. It says that by definition, they are anti-freedom. They don't want the American people to have freedom. They don't want them to be free of coercion, because the coercion is what keeps the system running. The coercion is what keeps those people on the bottom in their places. And if they had freedom, if they had more power coupons, they would have more options. And the more options they have, the harder they are to control, the more of a voice they have. When you look at the pay that the lower levels of our society get, it's not freedom. It is not freedom. They don't have a life free of necessity or coercion. That is their life. Their life is doing what they have to survive. And if you uphold that system, you are anti-freedom. There's no other way to frame it. The only attempt that people make in trying to justify this is, well, we live in a country that has the most opportunity in the world. We live in the freest country in the world. I don't know where they're getting these statistics.
But do we?
And because we're in this free,
Say that again.
But do we? Do we live in the freest country in the world?
I don't know enough of the other countries to state that, but as I was saying at the top of the hour, that we do have more freedoms than many other countries. But
Yeah.
are we the freest nation on earth? I can't answer that.
this country, these people on the bottom, they have the ability to change their station. So they are free. Right. That totally makes sense. So those people who currently live in objectively totalitarian countries, well, they're really free deep down because they have the ability to sneak out, right? They can change their location. So really they're free, even if they are constantly acted upon by the state through coercive means. You wouldn't buy that. Those people in jail, oh, they're really free because, their station could change. They could get an appeal or they could escape, right? And then because that possibility exists, they're free. The reality is changing your station in the United States, moving between classes in the United States, that is a rarity. That's not something that occurs very often. Not enough to warrant the idea that those on the bottom have a way out. Statistically, they don't. They don't. That's one of the biggest determining factors, is where you started. When you hear politicians push back against the citizens of this country so they can defend the corporations of this country, understand they are anti-freedom. They want that coercion in place. They want those on the bottom kept in line through that coercion. That's not freedom. It's the opposite of freedom. They want them in a position that says, hey, I know you're sick and all, but you need to get to work because rent's due, or get out on the street. It's not exactly free. And that situation exists for a whole lot of people because the minimum wage in this country has been neglected. Because prices have gone up, profits have gone up, but those people on the bottom have been left behind because that is where those politicians want them. They want them in a position where they have no voice, where they don't have power coupons, where they can't influence change because those who are on the bottom of this system know the need for change the most.
So he's calling power coupons?
Yeah.
That's what you were saying earlier. I'm like, power coupons? Yep. Like, what's he talking about?
Oh, I was paraphrasing the heck out of him.
It's funny. Power coupons. All right.
If a politician is against raising the minimum wage, if a politician is against a living wage for everybody, regardless of that profession, they are anti-freedom. They are pro-oppression. They want that coercive system in place because it safeguards the status quo, and therefore it safeguards them. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
All right, that is Bo of the Fifth Column. Definitely do check out his channel. He's got a lot of good things to say there.
Yeah, and he is an amazing analyst. He breaks things down, and he blows a lot of conspiracy theories completely out of the water, which I love about him. And yes, he looks like a Southern redneck on purpose. Each of the things in the background and on his hat are things that he uses in his podcast to make a point. Like on his hat, he's got his Curious George sticker. When it's upside down, though I haven't seen it upside down for a while, he's making fun of something. So there's like these little cues. Also, he wears different T-shirts for each of his podcasts. Each one of them have a slightly different message. But he's a brilliant analyst, and he breaks down things. And he's got a very strong background in policy and in military. So when he starts talking about the military, he knows what he's talking about. He talks about law enforcement a lot. He's got a strong background there. He teaches classes on communication and
So
connection.
can you kind of reiterate there what was he saying the solution was?
Power coupons. Where his solution, our solution is we need to not believe what we're told. And you know, I always hesitate saying this, but there's no other way to put it. Most of what we've been told since we were old enough to hear is pushing us into this system that fails us. How we get out of it is to start gaining perspective and seeing what is true and what is not true and having discussions together and deciding to change it. And understand that status quo is what government and corporations want because it works for them, but it doesn't work for us. And right now, the only way that we succeed is to gain power coupons, which would be dollars. And I guess that's what money's backed by these days is its ability to promote you into a higher power position.
Well, you got to have power coupons to survive, right? I
Yes,
mean,
you
the
do.
system is designed to keep you chasing the power coupons, right? I mean, for the most part, education is based on, you know, creating workers. So you're being socialized into this system, you know, right from the beginning. Um, so there's definitely a lot of work to do. You know, my thought is it really does need to be something, and I use MAGA as an example because it really does have a foothold in the country in many different states. I would
Hmm.
probably say all states, right? And we have a strong contingency of MAGA, you know, right here in the county. Um, but with that, what's happening is they are being elected into office, and then they are banding together and they are making changes that may not be the populist. Um, you know, decisions, but they are making change. So it can be done, right? There is a blueprint on how to do
But
that.
the more certain way to make change, it's harder work, but the more certain way to make change is to come together and decide from the ground up what change needs to be made. It's the one that will be more certain for a human future. And I would like to hear from the people, and not this one, but the next podcast. I would like to everyone who follows us to please enter in your thought of what a human future would look like, because that brings your piece of the puzzle. So next week, please write your thoughts about what a human future looks like into the comments, so we can start gathering that and talking about it, because we've got a show coming up on in about 2 weeks that we're going to be talking about the big picture, and I want to talk about the puzzle pieces in. So please enter your thoughts on what being human, what a human future would look like, a future that supports our humanity, that would maybe address the 46% of us that are one paycheck away from being homeless, not to mention the people who are homeless. But when we have a country where half of us are in poverty, we have an issue. And that issue is the only way to get there. I mean, that issue is not going to be addressed by politicians. It's going to be addressed by us. And not through revolution, but by coming together and telling the system, because we, the people, what needs to happen to support us. It's a constant building thread with a very strong foundation. It's not showing up one time with a sign, screaming and yelling. It's not showing up for a march, because those are good. They send the message, but it's not consistent enough, and it doesn't apply pressure long enough for actual change to happen. That's got to be a slow process of coming together and educating ourselves and working together. So let me counter the MAGA with our statement, resilient ecosystem statement to you. We have your back, and if you work with us, we'll help you attain a human future.
All right, I like it. I like it. Trying to think of a what would that be if you changed the words up a little
An
bit?
acronym. Yeah, we'll have to
Yeah.
work on an acronym for it. But we got your back.
All right. So if you want to send your questions in, you can send them to mark at roseco.org. You can also post it, I believe, on the Facebook page, right?
Yes, you can.
Uh, yep, Facebook / Roseco Projects. And there's also a website, www.roseco.org. Get involved. Mark puts a lot of great information out there for you to consume and to help you along on building community and building relationship. I also want to mention the Pancake Breakfast is coming up here in 2 weeks. So August
Hmm.
24th at New Horizon Ministries, 4040 Wheaton Way, Suite 203, Bremerton, Washington, 98337. Definitely send your information if you want to get on the mailing list. I've had several people who were really upset they missed the breakfast because they forgot. They're like, "Can you please send me a reminder?" So the next 2 or 3 breakfasts, we're going to be doing some big things. We may even need a larger space for a breakfast that is coming up here soon. So, Mark, I have to tell you about that offline.
Okay.
But we've got some exciting things coming up in the future. Of course, we've got our neighborhood barbecue coming up. Don't have the date on that right now. I think that's August 27th, and that will be in Port Orchard. I'll have more information on that. And then in September, it will be down at Blueberry
Community
what was it
Gardens.
called? Community
It's good.
Gardens. So
Yeah, Blueberry Community Gardens on Sylvan Way, very near Grocery Outlet over there.
and that's in September. So we'll put that
Yep,
information
September
out.
24th. And also, you can find it on our website in the calendar. All of that goes into the calendar section. You can go and find that. Also, a little housekeeping.
Oh, good.
There is a major update on the website coming. Probably will be out next week. I'm in the process of working on that now, and that will be available. And I think you'll like where that heads. The information will be much easier to get to.
Got you. Okay. I love it. I love it. The last thing I'll say before I give you the final word is that based on the conversation, if you haven't had a chance yet to read the book by Daniel Quinn, I reached out. I had to reset my library card. And so I've got that. My membership is back. And I just got a message saying that it was in. So I'm going to
Awesome.
go down and pick it up. And so I just want to share these resources are important, right? It's showing folks how to get connected and how to take care of things. It's not difficult. It was super easy to do. Librarians are really friendly, so take advantage of that. Like I said, there's so much good information out there for you. So go ahead and do that. And then the last piece of information was something else that happened.
While
Um,
you're thinking about that, KRL has a mailing list you should sign up for because they send you really useful information in your email. I mean, I
oh,
don't
do they
like a
really?
lot. Yeah, I don't like a lot of spam email from people. I tend to block them, but KRL sends me a lot of really interesting things. Matter of fact, I got one this morning talking about the Fifth Street Library getting ready to have a new roof, and they
Yes.
said, they're apologizing for the desk, but they also talk about their children's programs. They talk about reading programs and resources all the time on there. And actually, if you want to learn a language, they have a program called Mango, which is free. You can go online and you can learn a language. I'm actually in the process of working on my Spanish right now.
Nice. Nice. I love it. I love it.
Oh, and
All right.
make sure that you watch the Conduits KRL podcast once a month because it's always full of great information.
That is a true story. And I didn't even pay him to say that.
We'll talk
All
about
right.
that later.
I'm gonna give it I'm gonna give you the final word, Mark. What's the
Be
final
real.
word for us? Be real?
Be real. Be real, and listen with your heart. And learn as much as you can possibly learn outside your bubble. Bubbles are fragile. Try not to live in one.
All right. Be real. That is the final word of the day. I am Marwan Cameron for Mark Boatwright-Frost. Happy birthday. We will see you in an hour.